right, so good afternoon. Welcome to the Imposter Syndrome, Do I Really Belong Here session. If you're not sure if you're supposed to be here, me neither. You are among friends, it's okay. So this session's probably going to be a little different than some of the other ones that you've attended. This is going to be us talking about our personal experiences, try to be kind of conversational, be kind of like a group therapy session, something that we all need, I think, especially after some raucous public meetings. So, all right, so you know about the Mentimeter, so let me tell you just before we all introduce ourselves and tell our own stories, let me tell you how this session came to be. So last year, I attended my first National Planning Conference. Do we have any first-time conference attendees here today? It's exciting, right? It's so much fun, right? You're in a new city. Last year I was in San Diego. I'd never been to California before. And suddenly I'm surrounded by thousands of people who do the same work that I do every day, who care about the same issues, who are facing the same problems, in work. And I'm just overwhelmed, I'm in awe, and honestly, it's kind of intimidating. And so I found my director, Emily Liu, during one of the breaks, and she introduced me to the woman she was speaking with, who happened to be the director of the Planning Commission, Philadelphia, Eleanor Sharp. You may remember her as the woman who opened up the National Planning Conference. And I said, I really wish there was a group for people like me, people who work in planning but don't have a planning degree, because I'm constantly feeling this imposter syndrome. And Eleanor Sharp looked at me and she said, write a session on that, and then you can come to my city next year. So guess what I did, y'all? I wrote a session, and they accepted it, and so here I am. And one of the reasons why I share that is because, Eleanor is director, she's this person who's been working in planning for her whole life, somebody, whose opinion really matters to me. And she said one little thing, and it inspired something in me, and it prompted me, gave me the courage to do something that's kind of big, or at least I feel that way standing in front of you all. So with that, let's see what we're talking about exactly. So here's a definition for imposter syndrome, and this is loosely defined as like feeling like a fraud, having some issues with self-doubt, even if you're an accomplished person. There's a couple of articles. One of them recently came out in the New Yorker. Maybe you've read it, maybe you saw it, but we read these articles. There might be a reference to them, but anyway, just if you want to do any further reading. I don't claim to be an expert on imposter syndrome. I'm just an expert on my own experiences, and I want to share that with you. Okay, so I think what we'll do is kind of tell you how we came to be in planning, and then how we experience imposter syndrome. And so already, I'll go ahead and start. So I was a non-traditional college student in my 30s with a child, and had been planning for a career in archaeology since I was in 4th grade. I love some ancient Egypt, so thought that's what I would be doing. So my undergrad degree is in anthropology. And then after I graduated, I needed a job, and I knew I wanted to work in government. So to get my foot in the door, I started actually with Metro Animal Services. I was basically a Cooper scooper. I did just a couple of months there. It's great work, but an opportunity opened with a better schedule with the planning department, and I was hired in a very administrative position, management assistant. So basically I would run the public meetings, do the minutes afterwards, transmit all the bureaucratic stuff. And turns out I was learning about planning as I was attending those meetings, and I really liked the work. So I thought, I'm gonna move on and try to be a planning technician. And so that's what I did. I kind of learned planning through working there. And as an associate planner, I went back to school to get my master's in anthropology. Still have this idea that I would be an archaeologist. I even went to field school in American Samoa, which is a really neat place to visit. And I finally finished my master's in anthropology. But I stuck with the planning department because I love it. I love the people that I work with, and I like the work that I do. But there was always this thing in the back of my mind that said, you're not a real planner. I'm surrounded by people who have planning degrees, who have masters in planning degrees, and I don't have that. And so when they would talk about planners, I never saw myself as one of them. I was just this person who was really good at customer service, and that's how I came to lead the planning resources team. But it took me a long time to call myself a planner because I just didn't see myself that way. And that's mostly how imposter syndrome has manifested for me. It's just the fact that I don't have a planning degree. And so with that, I have Naya share her story.
Hello, I am Naya Holt. I am currently the zoning administrator for the city of Riverside, Ohio, just outside of Dayton, Ohio, which is an hour from Cincinnati. For those who are not familiar with little bitty Riverside, 25,000 people, little dot in southwest Ohio. I came to planning in a kind of circumvent way as well. I wanted to be a psychologist, working with youth. I started out at the University of Dayton as a psychology major. I had an internship at Daybreak working with homeless youth. I really had a passion for that, but it was really breaking my heart seeing them. I joined a group there called the Dayton Civic Scholars, and I was still working with young people through that program, but they had a project there where you would do a neighborhood plan. And I was working with young people and seeing them talk about the future of the neighborhood and what they wanted to do. And I was like, this is kind of cool. And one of the professors there, he said, you know, you can go to planning school and do this. I was like, planning? What the hell is that? Excuse my language. What is that? And he happened to be a graduate of the University of Louisville. And I had family there. My grandmother was from there, and I was like, I can do that. I went there and got a dual major in public administration and urban planning, and they happened to give me a job at Metro, and I was like, okay, guess I'm staying in Louisville. I can work here. I did that until the pandemic hit, and I came back to the Dayton area and worked for Riverside. One thing I noticed, which that professor didn't tell me, is that the planning profession is very white and very male dominated. So going through this profession, and even in planning school, there weren't a lot of people who looked like me. And so when I would enter the classroom or enter meetings, I was the only one who looked like me. And I would help people in the community, and they would ask for me because they wanted someone who looked like them to help them through the permitting process. They wanted someone who looked like them to explain all these laws and this red tape. And that was a big responsibility. And so I felt like, okay, do I know enough? This is just me coming out of graduate school, having to explain these big laws that I'm just learning in a whole, new city. Louisville zoning code is over 800 pages. And I was just learning and trying to explain this to, residents. Same thing within Riverside, learning a whole new code and trying to explain this to people. And that was my 4th year as a planner. I'm usually the youngest one in the room, and there, it's just me. I am the zoning department. Right now, the zoning department's shut down because I'm here. So, having that experience and trying to assert my authority as that zoning professional and get that respect as a woman, as someone who's young, and as someone who is a Black woman, and say, yes, this is the rule, this is the law, and have that respect has sometimes been hard because there is people, especially in a smaller community, there is an old boys network, and they're not used to having a young Black woman assert their authority. And I had to get used to that because I was not used to that as doing that. So I'm getting there though.
Good afternoon. My name is Luis Calvo. I am an urban planner with MKSK. MKSK is a collective of landscape architects, urban planners, and urban designers based out of Columbus, Ohio, with 12 offices across the Midwest. I have plugged the firm, Andrew. I've been at MKSK for 10 years, and throughout my years at MKSK, I have interacted many times with local intergovernment, and through that with Andrea. So when Andrea sent me a message, an email, telling me about this session about imposter syndrome, and then she said she thought of me, I thought, I've been had, I've been found. Everyone knows. So I have dealt with imposter syndrome for a long time, and sometimes I wondered, do I have imposter syndrome, or am I just shy? Or am I just an introvert? And I struggled with this throughout the years. I was, a little bit about me, I was born and raised in Colombia. I moved to the US when I was 18. I was here as an international student. I went to architecture school in suburban Atlanta. After architecture school, I moved to Florida to practice there at an architecture firm. One day when I was detailing bathrooms, I thought, this is probably not for me. I want to figure out something else. And then I found planning kind of sort of by accident, which seems to be a common thread. I was going through my way to Chicago to visit, and I was stuck in a snowstorm, and the only exit that was kind of safe was going through Louisville, Kentucky. And I really fell in love with the city, and I loved it, and I thought, I could live here. And then when I was looking for schools, for grad school, trying to figure out what to do with my life, I thought, Louisville, I'll think about it. So I went into the programs, I saw they had a planning program, and I thought, is this loosely related to what I want? And then I went into looking into the profession and figured out, this actually seems like something that I would like. This has all of the things that I've been missing about architecture school that maybe I thought architecture was going to be as a profession, but then I went into architecture and I was like, pass. So I went into planning school, really loved it. I had a graphics background, so the U of O's planning school, for those who are not familiar, is very policy-based. That was actually kind of refreshing for me because it gave me a different perspective. And then once I graduated, I got hired straight out of grad school by my current firm, MKSK. My colleagues who are here actually hired me after meeting me at a public meeting. So if you're a student, go to public meetings. And then I started my work as a private consultant, and I feel like part of my job is to act confidently and say things about what we're doing and relate to communities. And very quickly on, I realized this was my first job at a grad school. Because of the breadth of the projects that we worked in, there's no way I know everything here. I don't know the communities, I don't know exactly what they're dealing with. I don't know the subject matter as well. I was fresh out of grad school. So I really, had a lot of difficulty acting confidently. I feel like the first 3 months at MKSK, I did not actually speak actively during a meeting with a client. I was petrified of saying things and being found that I don't know what I'm talking about. And it wasn't really until I learned the fact that we don't know we don't know everything. Every single person doesn't know everything. That I really started dealing with my imposter syndrome. The fact that I can lean on my team for other things. The fact that we all know a little bit about everything and we're all experts in one thing. And then together we're actually, we know exactly what we're talking about. So this is a very strange setup for me because again, as a private consultant, I am really paid to be confident, so putting myself in this vulnerable position is very interesting.
Well, as I suspected, there are some other people out there who are feeling this imposter syndrome sometimes. It's not just me, it's not just you, and I think it's important to talk about it. I mean, if there's one thing that came out of the pandemic, it's that we need to pay attention to our mental health. I think that this is something that affects our job satisfaction. It affects maybe how we try to move forward in our career. So yeah, that's why I wanted to talk about it. So in one of those articles that we read, It talked about how imposterism, or imposter phenomenon occurs most often in women. Doesn't matter how accomplished they may or may not be. So, Naya, you single-handedly run, the zoning department for a city of 25,000. How is it? I just don't know. How is it that you have imposter syndrome? I mean, you're pretty awesome.
Thank you. So I don't feel that every day. I don't feel that I'm awesome every day. And that's kind of where that imposter syndrome comes from. There's days where it's like, yeah, I got it. But then there's days I walk in and there's just so much coming at me that I get overwhelmed. And I think, okay, this is something new, I haven't handled it before, and I have those 25,000 people that I have to worry about. I have someone complaining about me to the city manager because I made them, move their camera that's parked somewhere that it shouldn't be. Or I told someone that, hey, you started demolishing a house without turning off the gas, and that's dangerous. That's something I dealt with before I came here. And so they're, complaining that, but I'm just doing my job. And I have to remember that it's okay to be awesome, as you said, and take a compliment when it comes. And that's hard sometimes because we're told as women that we have to be humble, that we have to, not put ourselves out there as much. But breaking those stereotypes is what I'm working on every day.
And I'm obviously not a woman, or I don't identify as one, but I have a lot of female colleagues, and I think what I find fascinating is how many of my female colleagues still tell me to this day that they go into a meeting and they're often the only woman in the room, or they're often the only woman in their team, and that can still be daunting, or it can be, off-putting.
And even now, I oversee, two, I have a planning tech and a code enforcement officer that report to me. And I will give, a direction, I will give, something, and the resident will call that code enforcement officer or planning to check to see if I gave the right instructions or gave the right recommendation, just to double check. That happens so often. Or I'll have a developer come in to meet in person and they'll walk by me and go, to somebody else and say, oh, I'm here to see Nia Holt, or I'm here to see another male name, not thinking that, hey, it's me, I'm the one you need to talk to. That happens.
I tell you how it happens for me. I'm the supervisor of our front counter team, so we see all the customers that come in all the time or call on the phone, and I'll answer the phone or I'll read a customer, and they want to talk to one of my male team members, and sometimes I just go, okay, and they'll be right with you. And then other times I'm like, well, I'm their supervisor. Is there anything I can help you with? So, that is definitely something that we do face every now and then. And sometimes it is a little bump to my ego. And then some days I'm just like, I'm gonna let you have it. Luis, you had shared a story with us earlier about your experience growing up outside of the U.S. and what that means. And you shared like kind of a unique story about how people view you as a planner.
Yeah, so like I mentioned, I was born and raised in Colombia, lived there till I was 18. And Colombia, as a country, especially in the larger cities, has done a fantastic job with urban planning. The cities there are fantastic, and there's some really amazing things to emulate. However, my family does not understand it. And there happens to be just a huge disconnect there on the prominence of urban planning as a profession. So I would say to this day, when I'm introduced by my family, this is Luis, he's an architect in the US. Actually, I am not. I'm an urban planner, to the point where I'm just like constantly correcting. And to me, it comes down, one, growing up overseas, sometimes when I'm coming into a community, I didn't have the American experience growing up. I didn't grow up in a suburb. I grew up in a very dense city, in a very dense urban environment. It's been a lot of catch up on, the American way of life. And I thought if this was a unique experience to me, it's not. I mean, I was doing the job fair booth yesterday for my company, and I talked to so many international students who are coming into the planning profession, many of which with architecture degrees. So I think there's a lot of us with this background. But it took a little bit of time for me to be able to relate to the communities and really think through that experience growing up. But it's great that, I think as a profession here in the States, it's a lot more respected and a lot more understood. However, I still kind of struggle with the public perception of planning here. And I feel like sometimes I wish we had like an engineer stamp and be like, there's a planning document, it's got the planning stamp, so. And I feel like there's some like the planning profession doesn't sometimes get the respect that it ought to get. And that to me kind of takes away my confidence in some of the decisions that we're making.
And you also, probably more so than I, because I work with government, work a lot with community-driven planning, and you're interacting with neighbors and neighborhoods a lot. Do you think, as opposed to some of this imposter syndrome coming from the inside out, is it ever just like imposed on you, like, no, you don't belong here, you don't know about our neighborhood?
It can be very daunting, especially because we work in many communities across the country. I think there's this perception of the quote-unquote out-of-town consultant. You come in and many communities have a skepticism, and I think we in the private world have a responsibility to really understand that community as much as we possibly can, and really lean on people like Naya to fill in the gaps and really give us the local perspective. And I think from that angle, from what helped me was to really come to terms with the fact that I won't know exactly every aspect of the community. I think we can learn as much as we possibly can, but a lot of the answers when we're in meetings and we talk to people, a lot of it really it's not my role as the private consultant to answer some of the questions. I really prefer to lean on the expertise of a client like Naya to really fill in the gaps and really tell us, really help us get the language right, help us get the local context right, and then the planning work will benefit in general.
Okay, so I have one more question for you all. So I know with my own issues with imposter syndrome, not feeling like a real planner, I have tried to figure out some ways to get me past that. And so some tools to help me battle that, if you will. And so one of the big things, and really kind of inspired by my director who received her FAICP last year at the National Planning Conference, I decided that surely I can get rid of this feeling if I got my AICP. And so this fall, I passed my AICP. I was going absolutely, I have no problem telling people that I'm a planner anymore. I am a planner. I am certifiable. I'm certified. And I think that's really important because it's not just a test you take. It's also this ethics that you have to follow. It talks about how the integrity of our work, and that we are public servants, that that we work for the community. So anyway, I would encourage anybody who is an ASCP to contact your PDO and go for it because it's absolutely possible. Another tool that I use is have a mentor. Do you have a mentor? It's a great person to have to encourage you, to be your cheerleader. I never actually officially asked my director to be my mentor, but I mean, if it wasn't for her picking me to go to the National Planning Conference, I probably wouldn't have gotten my AICP. If it wasn't for her saying, hey, would you like to serve on this board? I wouldn't have ever put my name in for it. So, I mean, she also just gives me words of encouragement every now and then, just to say, hey, I see big things for you. You're not done here, you know? So, I think having a mentor is really important. So, Naya, what tools do you have?
For me, as we saw earlier,
For me, I have to stop overthinking. And one person I saw who just embodied that kind of ideal was, her name's Lula Howard. She is on the Louisville's Board of Zoning Appeals or adjustments, I'm sorry, Board of Adjustments, getting that language right from Kentucky versus Ohio. And she has served as one of like the oldest planners. She is this rock star of an African American woman, and just seeing the confidence of her and like the authority she exerts, I was like, I'm just doing too much. I have these negative thoughts in my head that I just need to stop and just, I got this. If Miss Lula can do it, I can do it. So I just put my like Miss Lula hat on, stop the overthinking, stop those negative thoughts, and get the work done. So that's one, just stop the overthinking, find, like she said, a mentor or someone you can look up to, stop those negative thoughts, stop overthinking, and get the work done. Another thing, and I said it a little bit earlier, take the compliment, because you are awesome. You are doing good work. Think about the things that you have done. If the resident or your client comes up and like, you know what? You really did a good job. I appreciate what you did. Take the compliment, take the thank you, and just, you know, put it in your hat, put that on your wall, whatever it is, take the compliment, because you did good.
Well, my strategies have changed throughout the years. Like I mentioned, this job was my first job out of grad school. This was, 10 years ago or so. I had a baby face. I was really concerned about not being taken seriously because I looked really young. So I really just dressed up a lot. I would put on collared shirts and I would, have long hair because that made me look a little older. Use these smoke and mirrors approach that wasn't really confidence building. It was, something that I came to terms with later. And here I am wearing a t-shirt today, so that must have worked. My strategy now is very different. I am fortunate to work with a large group of planners, and a lot of us happen to be around the same age. We're all in our mid-30s. We all seem to have about 10 years of experience, and we're all doing similar jobs, just in different offices. And what we do as a group is get together and really talk and have frank conversations about our experience, what we feel confident about, what decisions we sometimes are uneasy about, the things that make us feel like if we have imposter syndrome, we kind of just share about it, and we have like a no holds barred conversation. And I think that's been really helpful because these are people that I respect so much, and to know that they doubt themselves sometimes too has been really helpful for me. And it's been comforting. I mean, I have mentors as well, like you all have, that I also very much respect. But having the perspective of someone that's in your same situation has just been very enlightening, just because, I feel like I see the quality of their work and I see what they're doing and I respect it so much. To know that they also doubt themselves and they're in my same position gives me a little bit more confidence in the fact that it's okay to not know every single thing.
One thing that, say one thing more, our office started putting up a winning board, and I think that's been really helpful. So we got a note from a resident said, hey, not everybody can appreciate when you're, doing all these code violations, but we appreciate the turn in our community that we want to have a beautiful city. Putting that on the board. We got a new Kroger, for those at the grocery store in the Midwest. We put that up. Those things that are good, that are happening, listing out all the projects or accomplishments, just remind yourself of all the good that you're doing. But I think it's time to see who's in the room, see if we have imposters or not, or...
All of your answers will be revealed later. I'm just messing with you. So it looks like this room has more than 10 years of experience. I mean, there's a lot of people who have been in the profession for quite a while here. But in a meeting or work setting, we've got a lot of people who are the youngest person.
Hey, so, hey, I see you all.
Baby planners, I love them. That's what my team is made up of.
So I think everyone should be comforted that out of the 189 people here, 154 of you have some self-doubt or feel like you fooled someone. And I feel like that's statistically impossible for all of you to actually be imposters. So I think we can all be confident that we can have strategies to overcome some of these fears. I think this makes sense, right? That we don't often feel, not very often, but sometimes I feel like kind of relates to our experiences right now.
Yeah, because there's some situations you enter where it's like, okay, I have some experience, but not a lot. So we're getting, a little iffy in this. We're gonna just play it by ear.
I feel like I still remember the first time that I was in a meeting and I was saying something and I thought, oh my God, that sounds like I know what I'm talking about. And that was a big pivotal moment. I was like, oh, I actually do know what I'm talking about about this. So it looks like, experience, that really seems to be experience, age, inexperience, that really seems to really drive that
Anxiety,
confidence.
I definitely understand that one.
I see someone just put engineer. That's great.
I saw outsider too. I definitely understand that one.
For the engineer, please leave. This is great. Overwhelmed. I think that's an interesting one. I'm curious how that relates to this feeling of feeling an imposter. Do you all ever feel overwhelmed ever?
Well, yeah. So I feel like in my job, they throw everything at the zoning administrator. I was finding a new ordinance that is like, oh yeah, that's you too. Yeah. The housing inspector, oh yeah, you're the floodplain manager, you're this and that. It's all tied into the zoning administrator in my city.
Mm-hmm. Let's switch it to the next question. All right, so this one is very interesting. Does public perception of the planning profession contribute to this? I see that the majority of the group is sometimes, depending on the audience. I actually want, if someone would like to elaborate on this and you want to raise your hand, I'll go to you. Because I am curious what some of y'all think. Yeah?
Anybody else want to? And I'll go there.
Hello everyone. So for me, I am a planner for a small town in Virginia. We only have around 6,000 people. In the last 18 months, both the planning technician and the planning director have left, and I am the only staff member left. I started in January 2021, and I have been the only planner there for the last 18 months. And I kind of feel very overwhelmed. I'm only 25 as well, so it's kind of very new in my career. And for me, I had to struggle with this a lot. My dad, who's an attorney, actually in Ohio as well, so I kind of talked to him about this. But basically what happens is, I feel like I don't get a lot of credit for the work that I actually am doing behind the scenes. What people actually do is just complain when I do my job, but then when I actually do something that's good for the community, it just goes over. I don't get to take credit for it, which I'm fine with, but it's the council members who are taking credit for something that I do, or the other people. And it's for me right now. So currently the town manager just left, and they are jumping ahead with all of these things, and I have to kind of go to my boss currently and be like, hey, we need to relax. The town manager's been gone for 2 months. What is going on right now? So it's kind of, they don't understand. They're trying to throw terms about, or they're trying to talk about the comprehensive plan out in public. The comprehensive plan hasn't been updated in 10 years. Things that are outdated, and it's an old town. It's an older town in Northern Virginia. So it's very interesting, and it's just, I could go on and on about it, but yeah, I'm trying to kind of talk about it.
So you don't get the credit, but they gave you those other two salaries, right?
No, I actually make less than what the planning director made when I was there, and he made it a point to kind of tell me what he was making when I started. because he wanted to kind of get the credit for everything. He said, I don't ever want to be back in this town, and he's kind of bounced around 3 different jobs since I've been there. So, I mean, I'm kind of glad I went there. It's good to know what kind of person you want to be employed by and what kind of person you don't want to work under. So that's kind of experience, and it's funny, and I actually interviewed for your job at the same time. But you got it, and it's awesome to see that you got it. But no, it's funny to kind of connect the dots, and I'm proud to hear that. Your experience.
Well, the new city manager asked me if you're still looking for.
Those hit me with a good time.
Round of encouragement for Nick. Thank you.
So I'm Caitlin. I work at an engineering firm, and I'm one of 5 planners at the firm. So we also do engineering for municipalities, and what I have found, being young and a female, and I go to meetings with my boss, who is older and a male, and I go with my engineers, and everyone asks the engineer what they think about planning. What are they going to do about the Park Rec and Open Space Plan? Well, Josh, what do you think? Josh isn't a planner, he's an engineer. And that's something I really struggle with, and it all depends on, the municipality you're in, who you go with, and we have some really great engineers that are supportive, and will turn the conversation back and say, well, Caitlin, what do you think? Because that's my job. I'm there as a planner, I'm there to help them. They're there to manage the client. So I think for me, just saying, I think it's really great to let your supervisors know, or people that you go with know how you feel, and say, I want to be able to step up and talk to the people. I don't want, you to always have to feel like you have to step in and answer the questions, help me out, pass me a softball a couple times, and then eventually you work your way up in confidence. So again, it all depends on that, who you're seeing. But yeah, thanks.
I think something that you said is really important. So, as we have EDI, goals in planning, EPA, we want to increase diversity and inclusivity in our own ranks. So, if we know that these things happen, if there's, people who look past you for answers, then maybe it's good to have, a coworker who does that, who redirects, who says, oh no, I'm not the expert, she is. So, and another reason why I think it's important that we're talking about this.
And I switch to the next question, how did you overcome, or our overcoming your feelings about this? I see, a lot of it has been about preparation, research. There's always the fake it till you make it, which I have very mixed feelings about, because I feel like fundamentally we're not actually faking it, we're building confidence, and that's a little bit different. I think we all got to where we are for some sort of merit. And the quote unquote fake it is really, maybe you're faking the confidence, but I don't feel like you're actually faking the skill set. Ultimately, I think that's just impossible to really fake.
Does anybody want to expand on their answer?
Hi, my name is Gurdeep. I'm just gonna mention 2 things. One, again, being who I am physically, I got a lot of the, can I talk to your boss? What's the real answer? And so when the pandemic hit, I kind of hid behind the screen because people assume the person answering emails is male. And my efficiency improved because I wasn't negotiating anymore. It's like, oh yeah, I'll build it this way, sure. Like, lightning speed. And the second thing, what really helped was my very first boss wouldn't fight my fights for me. Like, I was an intern, and they'd be like, can you bring your boss out? And I'd like, hey, Wayne, they want to talk to you. And he was like the nicest person, but he wouldn't go out there and like do it for me, and kept pushing me back out there, and I had to like come up with the words to figure out like how I'm gonna tell this person that no, like, this is what the code says.
Thank you. just about at time, but I want Naya to tell you her response to one of our front desk customers. She used to be on my team. I consider her my work daughter. But when they asked her if her job was hard.
So yes, this was very early on in my career, and I'm putting in his application as a planning tech at the time, and he's like, "Oh, is this a hard job?" He sees 3 women up front, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I have 2 masters. I'm learning. She has a master's. She has a master's. She's been doing this for like a year. So it's pretty hard. We still have to get some education, and I'm just typing away, putting on his little variance application." He's like, "Oh, so you actually have to be educated." So, yeah, that's the kind of thing I thought when she asked the question earlier, when we were preparing for this, about the respect that planners get. So, yeah, that's something she wanted to share.
And I really appreciate everyone's frank answers here. I think we have a lot about, pouring it into myself, like people who are really working at this. And I think this is one, a really good comment, continuing to remind myself that I'm an expert in my own experience and it's a work in progress. I think that's really important to understand where we are in our careers, to understand our abilities, not overcommit to things that we're not ready for sometimes, but also acknowledging the things that we're really good at.
I think
We're at the end of the time. It's 2:45, but we really appreciate everyone's time today.